Today we have torn apart on the workbench a realistic Radio Shack model SA-10 solid state stereo amplifier. This is one of those little miniature amplifiers. It's good for maybe 1 watt, 1.25 watts per channel. Actually, I was reading on the internet that these are good for about 0.75 watts per channel undistorted, or 1.25 watts per channel with 10% distortion. So obviously these won't shake the windows, but you know, when used with some efficient speakers, they actually do pretty good for a small room or for a test amplifier on the workbench or for background music, etc., etc. Now there's one interesting thing to note about this amplifier. The model SA-10 first appeared in the 1975 Radio Shack catalog. Its last appearance was in the 1994 Radio Shack catalog, so do the math. That was almost 20 years that this little amp was in production. Now the earlier versions, I believe, were silver-faced and used discrete transistors in the output stage. The later models, like this one is, were black-faced and use ICs in the output stage. Now the best I can tell from date codes, this appears to be a 1985 model. And I actually have the amplifier that superseded this one. I think it's an SA-10 or something another. There's a video on it somewhere. And that particular amp has a magnetic and a ceramic phono input, as well as a CD input, tuner input, and a tape output. All this one has in the way of inputs is a ceramic phono, a tuner input, and speaker output. And on the front we have controls for left volume, right volume, tone, a stereo mono switch, the source select switch, and of course the power button. The newer amp actually has a single volume control and a balance control. Haven't tested this out yet, but the potentiometers are very stiff, hard to turn. So we're going to spray them down real good with this contact cleaner, this control cleaner, and then give it a test. Okay, we're all back together and ready to connect some speakers and some source material and see if this thing works. You know, apparently once again I'm very sure it's going to work since I fully reassembled it. And you might notice my workbench got a little bit straighter since the beginning of this video, and the reason for that is I accidentally knocked off one of the knobs and I pretty much had to tear this place apart to find it. But the main thing is we found the knob. So let's go get some speakers and see what happens. And oh, by the way, I might add that this amplifier sold for $29.95, I believe, the entire time that it was available. And one thing I noticed circuit-wise about this that's rather odd is the off-on switch is not in the AC power line. It's actually in the center tap of the power transformer. So essentially, no matter whether the unit is switched on or off, as long as it's plugged in, the power transformer is energized. I really don't like that, but I guess this is such a low-powered device that it really doesn't matter. And I guess I could always wire in another switch to have the AC power switched. Probably wouldn't want to use the existing switch because it's probably designed for low voltage and might not like 120 volts too well. But anyway, enough rambling. Let's test this thing out. Okay, we have everything connected. For our speakers, we're using a pair of Midland stereo speakers, probably from the early 70s. These actually most likely went with an all-in-one system of low power, so these speakers should match this amp just fine. And our CD is some religious instrumental CD, something that just happened to be laying here that I pulled out of a CD player that was left over here. That's our left. That's our right. but I can tell a little bit of a difference. Thing don't sound too bad to be a little small amp. Okay, that's the tape tuner input. Now let's switch it to phono input and see how that works. I don't have a ceramic cartridge equipped turntable handy, but the phono input in this case is very similar to the line input, so we'll just feed our CD player into the phono jack. Okay, here we are on phono input. Left volume, right volume. Stereo and mono. Nice thing about a stereo and mono switch is, if you want to plug in a mono source, you can just flip this switch to mono and it'll combine the left and right channels together. Okay, there you go, my realistic SA-10 solid state amplifier. Not a bad little amp to be a $29.95 special. Now, a couple of things that I would have done to make this better, had I been the one designing this amp, is one, like I mentioned before, this power switch would be wired in the AC line and not in the center tap of the power transformer. Two, we wouldn't have separate left and right volume controls. We'd have a tone control, a volume, and a balance control. I associate left and right volume with those cheap phonographs of the 60s and 70s, and I really don't like to have to adjust two volume controls to get the sound level to where it should be. It's so much easier just to have a balance control that's usually kept in the center position and one volume control. This is an old CD I recorded off of some records. And one thing to take note of with the right speakers, as in efficient speakers, these little low-powered amplifiers can actually produce quite a bit of volume, but the speakers are everything. Spending all my nights, all my money going. Well, apparently this is where our CD player hangs up on us. That's the reason they gave it to me. It's got something wrong with it. But anyway, there you go, the little realistic SA-10 amplifier. Well, that record's kind of scratchy. Should make a good bench test amp. Weird. We never had those kind of problems with analog sources. Okay, there you go. Thanks for watching, and more to come later. Maybe next time we'll crack this CD player open and see what's wrong with it.